All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to read this to you. A lot of us have talked about Paul Revere and we've listened to the poem about it, but I want to talk a little bit about the history. I love the story of Paul Revere, whether he rode or not. So said President Warren G. Harding in 1923. Like most Americans at the time, Harding probably learned about Paul Revere as a schoolboy when he read a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Later, when a skeptic claimed that the story of Revere's ride had never happened, Harding sprang to the poet's defense. But was Revere the hero Longfellow made him out to be? In 1860, the young nation whose fight for freedom began at Lexington and Concord was in danger of falling apart. War clouds gathered as Americans debated the issues of slavery and states' rights. The South, which had grown prosperous with slave labor, vigorously defended its way of life. The North, which had grown even more prosperous without slave labor, condemned slavery as morally wrong. Americans had never been so divided or Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was then the nation's most popular poet. He was also a Northerner who opposed slavery. As he watched the nation move towards war, Longfellow began to think about a new poem. He wanted it to be a call to arms for all who loved liberty in such a time of peril. One day in April 1860, Longfellow took a walk with a friend in Boston. His companion told him a story that took place on another April day some 85 years earlier. It was the tale of a midnight ride made by a silversmith named Paul Revere to alert the countryside to coming danger. Longfellow was inspired. Like Paul Revere's ride, the poem he planned would be a cry of alarm to awaken a sleeping nation. Longfellow set to work at once. His finished work, titled Paul Revere's Ride, was published in 1861. Over the next century, generations of school children would read and memorize this stirring lines. As you read the excerpt that follows, you can see why the poem captured so many American imaginations. Longfellow had set out to create a dramatic tale that would make patriotic hearts beat faster. In the process, he transformed Paul Revere from a local folk hero into a national legend. Even today, millions of Americans know the opening lines of Longfellow's poem. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. When we think of the events that launched the American Revolution, we can picture them clearly. Revere asked a friend to send a signal from Boston's Old North Church when British troops quartered there began to move out. One if by land, and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be. The signal comes, and Revere gallops into the night, waking the countryside with the news that the British are coming. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. Altered by our lone hero, the colonists rise up to defend their homes and liberties. You know the rest in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall. The rest, as I say it, is history. Or is it? Skeptics raised doubts about it. Historians were very quick to point out many inaccuracies in Longfellow's telling. For example, the poet omitted the fact that during his ride, Revere was captured by the British troops. Longfellow also left out the names of other messengers who rode that night, such as William Dawes or Samuel Prescott. As doubts about the poem multiplied, skeptics began to question the entire story. Some said Revere's ride didn't happen at all, or if it did, Revere was captured before he could warn any patriots. Such talk annoyed President Harding. Somebody made the ride and stirred the Minutemen in the colonies to fight the Battle of Lexington, he said. I love the story of Paul Revere, whether he rode or not. And as time passed, some doubters threw cold water on the idea that Revere was a hero at all. One skeptic said that Revere set out with two other guys for money. When the three were arrested, he turned stool pigeon and betrayed his two companions. Is this true? Was Revere a traitor for his cause? Modern historians find no evidence that Revere was paid to ride or that he became an informer when he was captured. But they also remind us that Revere was not the only hero of that monumentous night. Within hours of his ride, 122 colonists had lost their lives and many more lay wounded. As one historian writes, Revere's ride was not the major event that day, nor was Revere's warning so critical in triggering the bloodbath. patriotic farmers had been preparing to oppose the British for the better part of a year. His ride to Lexington took on meaning only because numerous other political activists had, like Revere, dedicated themselves to the cause. The real meaning of Revere's ride is what it tells us about these unsung heroes. On hearing that the British soldiers are coming, those patriotic farmers had a choice. They could remain safe in their beds or rise up to defend their rights. Looking at their response, historian David Hackett Fisher writes, "The history of a free people is the history of hard choices." In that respect, when Paul Revere alarmed the Massachusetts countryside, he was carrying a message for us all. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I do like this picture right here of Paul Revere, but for some reason, it reminds me a whole lot of Jack Black. Anyway, leave your comments and let me know what you think about this picture, but also about the story and how history itself can take change. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in class on Monday.